Okay, so the first question I have is how can I best prepare for the interview? And so, Tony, would you like to take a shot at this first, and then I'll ask
Yeah.
Lisa?
Absolutely. So I'll start off by, Marla, you mentioned my time at UPenn, and I love doing this today, team, so, or students, so feel free to make it interactive, ask questions in the chat. I think it's so important, when you think about going out into industry, around how you best prepare for the interview. And I think, one of the things is starting out with doing your homework. Really, there's so much content nowadays, whether that's YouTube, LinkedIn, on your employer, your potential employer's website, really kind of understanding what they do within the business context, so that then as you go into the interview, you can show up and have some questions for the interviewer. I always look at it like, as a candidate, you're interviewing the company just as much as we're interviewing you. So, and from an impression standpoint, it really is a big impact as I interview candidates when they come prepared with certain questions, whether it's relevant to, an acquisition that we just did or a contract that we just signed with a large, customer of ours. So having that background is really important. It shows that you've kind of done your homework there. And then the last piece is, really making sure that, you know who you're interviewing. So there's opportunities to do that on LinkedIn. As you get that interview schedule, you can go on LinkedIn, see individuals' backgrounds, maybe their career progression, education, different things like that. And then the last piece is just making sure that you have a plan to be on time, that your Microsoft Teams is working, or whatever mode of technology you might be using if it's not face to face. Really making sure that you're there on time and prepared.
Awesome.
Thanks, Marla.
Yeah, great advice. Lisa, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, part of the ensuring that the technology is working, for you, you don't have any issues there. Make sure the lighting is good in your room too, so that people can see you. And I think that's it. I think for that piece. Also, as far as and do your homework with your network. If you have anybody that works at that company specifically, you have an opportunity to ask questions to a real person that already works there. You may not have that opportunity every time, but if you do, you can be a little bit more candid with your questioning, and really get information about that company's culture.
Yeah. And Marla, sorry, if I could just add one more thing that I think is really great is, prepare, like really think about the questions, behavioral interview questions that are going to be asked. And I always coach people on, think about like 2 or 3 things that you're really proud of, whether that was in school with a project or maybe an internship, or, if you're working in labs, something that you did that you're really proud of. And like 9 times out of 10, any question that's asked, like if you have that great story, you can tell that and be prepared around telling that story, and you can usually answer those behavioral questions based on those 2 to 3 things that you're really proud about doing in the past. So really thinking about that as well.
Excellent. Great. Okay.
Question from Pat. So the question's from Sarah. How HR selects CVs to have an interview with those applicants?
Yeah, and since I'm HR, I can take that one. So, what I'll say is every company is a little different. So, I've worked with companies that we use the term ATS, which is applicant tracking system. So, your larger companies, they'll have that where you're applying and it's going into this applicant tracking system. Some companies decide that they're going to give their hiring managers access to that. And so those hiring managers are actually going in line by line, looking at resumes and things like that. Within our current organization, the model is that our recruiters, our talent acquisition team, is actually the only ones that have access to that. And what they're doing is they're looking at those resumes based on the minimum qualifications for that role. So, that is really where we start from, is we really start from, okay, what is the hiring manager has stated this is the minimum qualifications, and that TA person is going to go through, pull out those candidates with the minimum, share them with the hiring manager, and do kind of what I would call a calibration on, these profiles. Like, what is resonating with you, hiring manager? What are your kind of, we talk about it like, what are your must-haves and what are your nice-to-haves? And that's how we kind of start within our organization.
Great, thank you. And then is there any, I've seen students preparing resumes and sometimes it goes on to the second page, and there was old advice saying it has to be on one page. If they have enough that's meaningful, is it a problem to go to 2 pages? Does that kind of rule them out?
Lisa, do you want to give your perspective? I mean, I have mine, but.
Yeah, for me, it depends, right? So students, if it's maybe some lab work or something that you're really proud of, and it's relevant to the job you're applying in, sure. But I think if you can condense it, it's easier for the hiring managers to look for those key terminology, keywords, key skills as compared to the job description. That's what's really going to make it so that your resume stands out. So if you think about it, you might have hundreds of applicants we're looking through, and we don't have a lot of time. We're busy people, so that helps us not having to look through it. But if it's relevant and you really, really want to put it in there, just think about it. But Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, if you're going to lose sleep over not including something because you're going to a 2-page, then just do it. But early in your career with this, with you all as students, I would probably say 1 page is the right length. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not looking at it and saying, oh, well, this person just graduated, why do they have 2 pages? So, I just think, to Lisa's point, like, make sure it's meaningful, and that, we're just not trying to make it look long to be impressive, because that isn't what we really hit on.
Great, thank you.
We have more questions on chat. Should we go through them?
Sure.
Mariana is asking, work-life balance. How do we know the culture of the company on that? Is it okay to ask? Tony, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. So I think, Lisa, to your point earlier, like, if you know individuals within that organization, it's a great question to ask those individuals within maybe your already network who are working there. But absolutely, it's okay to ask. You should be asking about the culture of the organization. And, if you're really thoughtful around that, and say you're interviewing with several people, you should ask the same question to all the interviewers and see if you get the same answer, or if it's different with each interviewer. I'll be honest, one of our values is intensity. And when I'm interviewing any external candidate, if they ask me about culture, or even if they don't ask me about culture, I bring up intensity, because the culture that we have is fast-paced, managing multiple priorities. There is a level of intensity, because what we do, we believe, matters so much to patients that we serve, clients, customers, etc. So we want to be very clear about that, because, again, you all are making that choice too in terms of what culture you join. But I think 100% ask that question. We do have one more question. It's what about the management positions? How many pages are ideal? I think it's the same, right, as the previous one. Management, individual contributor, professional, track, scientist, right? I think just make it meaningful, because, like, as I get in my career, and Lisa's probably the same, like, I have to figure out what things I'm taking off, because I don't want it to be 3 pages. So
yeah, definitely, even the descriptions under the items, it can just be like a very, 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 like, maybe one-liner, or a sentence at most, but not multiple bullets for everything that you've done. And you want to make sure that you express the impact of whatever that was. If you were part of a chemistry club and you want to be a chemist, you could say something about a project that you did that is related to the work and the application that you have going in for a specific position. But going back to the question about work-life balance, one way you can ask it is kind of like, understanding that there's a lot of big projects and a lot of exciting, whether it's a new product launch or something new, how do you cover, when the work needs to continue on through the weekend or through the night? Like, how is there handoffs, or what's the teamwork like? And you can get a sense of, no, we pretty much just work through the night all the time, or yeah, it's every weekend. And you could say something like, I see you've got 28 sites globally. Is your company looking to expand, or are you looking to consolidate? What does the future look like? So you can get a sense of, how crazy are things going to be a little bit. So you don't have to say, I'm worried about work-life balance. Will I be able to go home at 4 or 5? Because then that's obviously not what you're trying to convey, even though that's
Correct.
kind of what you want to know.
Yeah. Great, Marla. There is one other question. So from an HR perspective, what are employers' key skills and what are they looking for in the top 5% of applicants? I'll answer this, and Lisa, maybe as a hiring manager, you can jump in as well. I think it's like, as recent college or new college graduates, I think there's this, like, what I would say we're looking for in that level is, number one, kind of that minimum experience, and it just depends on what that is from a QC perspective, QA, because I support the quality organization. But it's also like your ability, to learn, having that kind of, we talk about a growth mindset, right? Because you're joining an organization where you're going to learn new things, new capabilities, and develop. So I wouldn't say I could really say for all of our roles what's that top 5%, but it really is around, do you have a foundational understanding of quality or pharma services, or that experience, and going through quality, pathways of patient health and the quality sciences. We know you have that. And then really it's around, those behavioral interview questions on, does this person, can they give me an example of a time where they led with integrity, right? Or can they give me an example where they made a mistake, and how did they, course correct and move forward? How did they collaborate with, their classmates or lab partners, etc.? So those are the things that we kind of want to understand, because at this joining the organization, we know you're going to need to learn some of the technical, but do you have the right mindset to join this organization is what we're looking for as well.
Great. And Lisa, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think for us, we look at, being able to coach you, and for you to be flexible as well. So if we're looking for people that can mold and change as fast as our goals are changing, so just to give you some examples, sometimes we have to ditch projects altogether, and we might have been working on them for a few months, and just things are just not going to pan out for whatever reason. It could be budgets, it could be, people leaving the company, or newcomers that we need to retrain, or, there's a multitude of reasons. So we need someone that's able to, move to the next project and not dwell on that so much. So that type of experience is important to us. It's just, how coachable are you, and willing to just go with the flow in a way, right? Especially as a newcomer.
Great. Yeah, and we'll go on to the next question here in a second, but just what Tony said, the Quality Science Education Program is really preparing you for these two industries, and that is a skill set that is putting you above many other candidates, which is fantastic. So